All right, so this little message came during the ice storm. I was watching a video on YouTube, and everybody knows God could use anything to speak to you in whatever way He sees fit, and He used that video to drop a revelation on me. So here it goes. We are in a war, whether you realize it or not. When each one of us is born, we're born on a battlefield. The forces of light battling the forces of darkness. Since the beginning, the evil one has fought to corrupt and sow chaos into the creation of God. The evil one also fights to make sure that each one of us does not find the straight and narrow path which leads to life. And if you're born again and on the right path, the evil one tries to get us to fall and take the crooked and wide path that leads to destruction. But the Word says that we do not fight against flesh and blood. Please go to Ephesians 6. We will recap this that we know so very well. Ephesians 6, verse 10. So we're going to be bouncing. Not so much at this particular moment, but... I'll just read from here. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girded about with truth, and having the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And the final one. Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for the saints. We don't fight in the physical, as it's stated, although it may seem like it would be easier at times if you could just pick a bat up or whatever you have and go to town on your problem or whatever's attacking you, right? It seems like it'd be easier, because sometimes in the spiritual, it's a little, we always think in physical terms, but we got to really think in spiritual terms on it. So we don't fight in the physical, but in the spiritual. And we need that whole armor of God to fight in this battle. You cannot hope to survive on a battlefield without the proper equipment and, more importantly, I think, is the direction from the Lord. So, the title of the message is Unfurl Your Banner. Unfurl your banner. That's a word we don't really use today, furl, or in this case, unfurl. It means to unwrap, or unwrap is about the best way to describe it. So we're going to look at what is a banner / or standard. And Danny's going to flip through a couple of pictures here, and we'll kind of get an idea what these things look like. Go ahead. You can just, any one of them. So this is what a medieval banner could have looked like. You can go to the next one. Go ahead. Here's another one. These banners would have been on poles, or they would have been on lances. Keep going. Here's just a little artist rendition of one. There's a couple more. Just kind of get an idea what these things could have looked like there. So a banner is a flag or standard. It's made of fabric. It's used by a military commander, a monarch, or even a nation. Banners also bore the colors and symbols associated with the lord, king, or knight. As you can see there, and actually this is a good one to stop on, because this very banner is, you see they have the red section of it. It's got the 3 golden lions, and then you have the blue section with the fleur-de-lises on. That is when England and France were actually one kingdom, so they combined their crests from their coat of arms onto one deal. So that's what a banner would have looked like in those in those times. And I'm going to read a little brief, couple of paragraphs on a little brief history about medieval banners and flags here. It says, so from the beginning, the flags were used for the purpose of identification. By looking at the flag, observers, the flag or the standard, the banner, observers would be able to identify the status, association, or religion of the flag bearer. If the flag was extremely colorful, it hinted at nobility because often peasants couldn't afford those more expensive, darker dyes. Banners were used in wars to help soldiers identify friends and enemies. In later years, medieval flags were almost exclusively emblazoned with coat of arms, as that one is, or crests. This practice, called heraldry, it began around the 12th century. So that's just a kind of a quick rundown on this. So being a banner bearer, someone who bore that banner or that standard, if you want to call it that, is kind of a synonymous terms there, banner or standard. Number one, it's a very prestigious and honored position. It was the person who bore that banner was a trusted person. Was a very trusted person. The reason being is because it marked the location of your lord or king on the battlefield or the knight that you were with. So these things you could imagine on a massive battlefield with a bunch of people, especially back then, you would have had these people in specific companies would have had flags or banners of these types so that the general could look out and know where his guys are. Because they communicated with flags and trumpets and things of that nature on the battlefield. Banners were a rallying point for a company of men that he was with. And it was the point of reference for where your lord, knight, or king was located in the thick of battle. It was always a point, like if you were fighting and you heard the horn go off, you needed to look around and find where your commander was so you know where to rally back to. The thing about being a banner bearer, it was an incredibly dangerous job because it put a big target on your head for the enemy. Banner bearers didn't fight. Their job was simply to maintain that banner. Letting that banner drop or fall to the ground was a big no. That was a big no-no to do. Had to keep it up whenever it was time to keep it up. Had to wrap it up when it was time. It's different points. So it was very important. It was a dangerous job, and you didn't fight back. Your job was specifically to hold that banner so that people would know where the commander was at. So in that case, the banner bearer had to trust his lord and his fellow soldiers to protect him in the situation they were in. So when the banner bearer would have his banner furled or wrapped, it was very easy to handle. It was a sign of hiding your lord or knight's honor and their location, because nobody else could see it. It was just wrapped up. It was also a way of showing that there wasn't really a threat to the enemy there. The flag was wrapped. Usually whenever it is unfurled, it can be hard to handle, especially if the wind is going around. Some of these things would get anywhere as long up to 18 feet long. So that pulling in the wind would make you work. It also, when it was unfurled as that is, was a sign of, one, I'm a threat to the enemy, and that I'm more than likely about to attack. So now we're going to jump to Scripture. We're going to jump all over the place. I think it's all in the Old Testament, though. Yeah. So first we're going to go to Psalms 20. Psalm 20. I may just read the whole thing because it's not that long. No, I'll just read the main. Psalm 20, verse 5. It says, we will rejoice in thy salvation. In the name of our God, we will set up our banners. The Lord fulfill thy petitions. Almost as if you can consider your prayers as a type of banner in that from that one verse. But the Hebrew word there is nes. It's also the same when we're going to look at, this is specifically words that say, verses that say banner, and we're going to look at a bunch of other verses that say standard. It's the same Hebrew word for both. It means banner or standard. We're going to jump around a little bit more just to show some more examples of this. Go to Psalm 60. Psalm 60, verse 4. Psalm 60, verse 4. And it says, thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee, that it may be displayed because of truth. So that sounds like God gives you a banner if you fear him, or he can trust you with it. And it displays because of truth. We'll go to some people really probably, maybe one verse that people think of when you hear the word banner. Go to the Song of Solomon. It's right before Isaiah, chapter 2, verse 4. It says, he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Just hit a few more. In same Song of Solomon, chapter 6, we're going to hit 2 verses in there. Chapter 6, verse 4. And then we're going to jump to 10. Verse 4 says, thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. And that word terrible can mean awesome. It doesn't have to mean like, I guess it can be. It can be terrible. But awesome as in the sight of it. I mean, medieval those battlefields weren't necessarily dark gray things before they started fighting, let's say that. They were very colorful. That's how they identified people, right? Verse 10. Who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and as terrible as an army with banners? It's an army with banners. Jump to Isaiah, the next book over. Isaiah, 13:2. It says, lift up a banner upon the high mountain. Exalt thy voice unto them. Shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. And that, he's talking about, verse 1 states that it's the burden of Babylon from Isaiah, which Isaiah, the son of Amos, did see. So this is a vision he was getting. He's talking about lifting up banners upon the mountains. That'd be a very good visual point to place one so that things could be seen. Now we're going to jump to where the word is a standard. We're going to jump all the way back into Numbers. Chapter 1, verse 52. Numbers chapter 1, verse 52. And this is just after they got through numbering all of the men of war from all the different tribes. And it says, the children of Israel shall pitch their tents, every man by his own camp, and every man by his own standard throughout their hosts. Every tribe had its own standard, had its own flag, if you will, that marked them. And we're going to jump down to chapter 2, verse 2. That's a little easier for us than you had to do a few clicking, huh? A few clicks. It says, every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the ensign of their father's house. Far off from the tabernacle of the congregation shall they pitch. If you continue reading in chapter 2, it goes on to saying how on the east side, Judah will pitch under his banner, and there's two other tribes that are under him. And on the south side, Reuben pitches under his banner, and some other in east and west. It goes on. But every tribe had its own banner. Now we're going to jump all the way back to Isaiah. It's a lot of jumping. Isaiah 10. We're going to start in verse 13. All right. Prior to this, verses 1 through 12 is Isaiah getting a message from God about Assyria is going to be punished for what they did to Israel, right? Because, yes, God used Assyria to conquer Israel, the northern kingdom, but now their time was coming to have their judgment on them. So he goes, we're not going to read all of that. Where I wanted to get to starts in verse 13. So it says, "For he saith, by the strength of my hand I have done it, and by my wisdom, for I am prudent. And I have removed the bounds of the people, and have robbed their treasures, and have put down the inhabitants like a valiant man. And my hand hath found as the nest of riches of the people, and as one gathereth eggs that are left, have I gathered all the earth. And there was none that moved the wing, or opened the mouth, or peeped. Shall the axe boast against him that heweth with it therewith? Or shall the saw magnify itself against him that shaketh it? As if the rod should shake itself against them that lift it up, or as if the staff should lift up itself, as if it were no wood." Basically saying that Assyria was God's tool. It can't rise up against the person who used the tool, right? "Therefore shall the Lord of hosts, send among his fat ones leanness, and under his glory shall kindle burning like a burning of a fire. And the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame. And it shall burn and devour his thorns and his briars in one day. And shall consume the glory of his forest and the fruit of his fruitful field, both soul and body. And they shall be as when a standard bearer fainteth, and the rest of the trees of his forest shall be few, and the children may write them." So it says that they shall, talking about Assyria, they shall be as when a standard bearer fainteth. When a standard bearer does fall, because they were a target in the battlefield, they knew if they could take that guy out, it would throw people into disarray, and that's exactly what happens. So if a standard bearer would get taken out, or whatever happens to him, and nobody can retrieve it and get that banner back up, you have no more rally point for that group, that company. It's not for the whole army. It could be just for a specific company of guys. Or that particular company could get thrown into disarray, cause it to break down, and have a weak spot in the battle lines, which is not good.
That's why we got to pray for pestilence.
Yeah. So now to tie that back to when a standard bearer fainteth, we're going to go all the way to Exodus, chapter 17. Chapter 17. Starting in verse 8. All right, so this is on the way to Mount Sinai. This is before they get there. And then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, "Choose us out men to go out and fight with Amalek tomorrow. I will stand on the hilltop with the rod of God in my hand." So Joseph did as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. And it came to pass that when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy. And they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, and the one on one side and the other on the other side. And his hands were steadied until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomforted Amalek and the people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, "Write this for a memorial in the book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua. For I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under the sun." So I'm going to pause there for a second. We will go on to the next verse in a second. But you can almost, it doesn't say it's a banner, but it's very similar to one. That holding up of the rod was very much a rallying point and a remembrance, a focal point of what was going on. But when it dropped, Israel got pushed back. Very similar to what we just read about when the standard bearer would faint. Had things wouldn't go good if that banner wasn't where it needed to be at the proper moment. So, verse 15. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nisi, which you just say standard, you'd say Nes, but to say my banner is Nisi. So that's exactly where that would come from. So that even ties back to more that it's acting as if a banner for them. Another thing that came to mind when I was reading this is even the pillar of cloud and fire were very much a banner that led the people through the wilderness. Let's jump to Jeremiah, chapter 50. Right up to the end of Jeremiah there. We're not going to read the whole chapter because it's 46 verses. It would take quite a while. But we're going to hit just 2 out of it, and then we're going to jump again. Go to verse 1. So this is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 1. And the word that the Lord spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet, verse 2. Declare ye among the nations and publish, and set up a standard, publish, and conceal not. It didn't say don't put up a furled banner. It says put it up, let it be unconcealed, unfurled. It's to show that Babylon's about to get judged. A threat is coming, right? Babylon is taken. Baal is confounded. Moradach is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded. Her images are broken in pieces. We won't go into more of it because it continues on about what God's going to pour out on Babylon at that point. It goes through the entire chapter. There's one of my titles at the top, the little subtitles, it says, No Mercy for Babylon. So go to verse, chapter 51, actually. Chapter 51, next chapter. Hit verse 1 up, but we're gonna jump in and out of this one a little bit. Yeah, 51:1. Okay, so he says that, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will rise up against Babylon, and against them that dwell in the midst of them that riseth up against me, a destroying wind. And I will send to Babylon fanners, that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Go to verse 12. Set up a standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambush. For the Lord hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. So when I first read this, I'm like, okay, so Babylon's setting up standards on their walls. But then it says set up the ambush. That makes me think that they're setting up standards on the walls to ambush, thinking that, oh, we're good. We got our banner showing to them. But really, God was doing this to set an ambush up against Babylon themselves.
I think you called out a false flag.
Basically.
God did it to them.
That's right. Let's go down to verse 27 now. Like I said, you'd have to read through all this, but it goes through about basically the judgment upon Babylon, the chapter 50 and 51. 27. Set up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations. Prepare the nations against her, talking about Babylon. Call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Minni, and Ashkenaz. Appoint her captains against her. Cause the horses to come up as rough caterpillars. That's a lot of horses. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes. So they had Babylon before. Now the Medes are coming in. The Medes and the Persians. That's exactly where that's at. And the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble and sorrow. For every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation, without an inhabitant. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath their might hath failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger shall meet another, and show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. So, I mean, it goes on and on. Like I said, but just to show, back in 27, it says, set up a standard in the land. So it's a rallying point, right? It says, blow the trumpet. Prepare the nations to come against Babylon. So, I'm going to bring this back to a little bit more of the parallel that I got out of it in that, just out of that little video I watched. So whose banner are you bearing? The enemy's got them too. They got to identify, well, they identify each other. So all those things I read about being a banner bearer, we're going to go and look at them through that lens. So do you realize that once you became saved, you were bearing the Lord's banner, and he trusts you with it? Do you realize that you mark and represent the Lord and where his location is, being in you? If your banner is unfurled, that is. I guess there could be times he could tell you to furl it up if it's time to hide, right? Do you realize you became a rallying point for those around you, and that you are a conduit for the Holy Spirit to edify and to correct those near you? It's a place to receive instruction. Do you realize that being a banner bearer, being a Christian essentially, has put a target on your head, and that the enemy wants to take you out, to make you fall and misrepresent God and cause others to fall away as a result? So if he can take you out as a banner bearer, people around you will be like, there's prime examples of people in the world who's had that happen to them. One guy from Baton Rouge, big prominent guy. Yep. So that's a prime example of that exact situation. How many people quit going to church because of that or whatever? You know, we don't know. Right? Right. Or it gave them excuses to be like, oh, he did it. You know. So it causes disarray. Do you realize that we don't fight physically, but with prayer and worship to the Most High, and we have to maintain that banner of that? And do you realize that letting your banner drop can be equated to, this is me saying this, when I read this, it could be equated to backsliding. Do you let it hit the ground? Whether it's unfurled or not, you may have to carry it furled up because God may want you to hide or hide the location, right? But letting it drop is equated to backsliding. And do you realize that since you don't fight physically, that the battle is the Lord's? Do you trust him to fight for you? He's going to protect you, right? The banner you bear, is it furled or unfurled? I guess it depends on where you're at and what God's called you to do at the particular moment in time. But I guess you could, if he told you to unfurl it, are you trying to hide what the Lord has done in your life or what he's calling you to do? Because whenever you have it unfurled, you basically are, and you're living that life he's calling you to live in boldness. You're unapologetically waving that in the wind, showing the world and the enemy that you are not ashamed of what the Lord has done for you. Also showing that the Lord is with you. And hit the title slide. So I know it wasn't long. But that's what I got. So it's unfurl your banner.
Raise the banner, raise it high.
Yeah. Comments is fine.
The one we see today is like the Iwo Jima, the 4 Marines.
Yep.
Put the flag and they walk
Yeah.
on a mountain. They were doing that to show everybody, look,
That's right. Yeah.
we got the mountain, listen.
Right.
And they give everybody like.
That's it. You can see they do a lot of that. You can see it in movies nowadays. 'Cause, I mean, we don't see it like physically in our lives about people doing that kind of stuff, but you get it in movies and stuff about those banners. If you pay attention, they were everywhere. And like I said before, like those battlefields back then, they weren't as dark in contrast as we like to think. They were very brightly colored places with flags all over the place and everything. So it was a way to identify. You had to be, what's your identity, right? Whose banner are you flying? See? So
Wasn't it also instructions?
yes,
Like
they could have.
wave a
Right.
that would say hold.
Right, they could do it that way. They could do it with trumpets of some certain signals that way. So there was,
Like they raise the thing for the archers.
yep, they could do that, or to signal a charge or whatever. So there was different applications there. Like I said, we don't have to go into that deep deal. Well, I like to, but yeah. So that's what God gave me though. All from just a little history video I watched on YouTube.
That's how he speaks.
That's it. It was very in the moment. Just watch this little video and bam. So
And I like how each company or each different group had their own banner bearer.
right.
And it kind of reminded me of like, Pastor Lester, pastor over that church.
Yeah.
And here. And it was important to support, protect, defend, uphold the banner bearer
Right.
because their job was important. That's what was seen.
Hmm. And it was to mark a spot where people could go if they needed.
There was
Right.
instruction. Everything was coming to and through them, but they depended on everyone around and under and God over to
Right.
defend them because they couldn't fight for themselves
Right.
in the process. And I think it's important as a congregation to remember that they need to be fighting in prayer for their pastor. And even the pastors, as Paul said, to be fighting in prayer for their government.
Right.
Always be praying for those over you because the enemy's got to come through them to get to you anyway.
Right.
Definitely. So like I said, I knew it wasn't long, but
But in the whole thing, I had 2 confirmations. One, the
well, good.
last